David Arnold, first of all, welcome to the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books on PBS.
Thank you.
Great
thanks
to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You have a debut novel, Mosquitoland.
That's right.
Beautiful book.
Thank you, yeah.
Awesome
Love
cover.
Yep.
Love the whole thing. And you have an amazing new heroine, Mary Iris Malone, otherwise known as Mim,
Yeah.
who comes from what she calls Mosquitoland. Tell us, first of all, where Mosquitoland is.
It's Mississippi. It's Jackson, Mississippi. I spent some time. I lived there when I was a kid, and it was between the ages of 3 and 9. So what I remember are the mosquitoes and the heat, and we had some really great friends down there as well. But I always like to say that I don't think that Mim hates Mississippi so much as the things that are happening to her while she's in Mississippi.
Right. But ultimately, this is a travel journey. Mim gets on a bus in Jackson to head up to see her mother in Ohio. And as a father myself, I know you're a father as well.
Yeah.
And, Mim is a young girl on that bus. I worried about her the entire way.
Totally, yeah. She makes all kinds of horrible decisions. And I wrote most of all of the book actually while I was taking care of my newborn son. And so there were a lot of moments where I was typing and like looking at him while he was in his playpen or looking at him while he was asleep and just thinking, don't do these things, don't think these things. But you know, we're writing teens and we have to be honest to be authentic to that. They don't make all the right decisions. Neither do we, but yeah.
Was it difficult to write in the voice of a young girl? Was she always a girl, first of all?
She wasn't always a girl. No, the first few drafts, it was a male protagonist. I actually set out to write a new kid at school book. We moved around a bit when I was little, and so in the earliest drafts, it was a boy who had just moved to Jackson with his dad and his stepmom, and I thought it was going to be set in Jackson. I thought it was going to be him being the new kid at school, and then I very quickly realized that that wasn't the case and that the real story was back in Ohio. So that's kind of how it became the road trip novel. And then also a good friend of mine suggested that I try switching the gender from male to female, and I did that, and it really opened up the voice, and I very much knew that I had found my character. But I also like to say, like, we're all people, and we all are, especially at that age, we're struggling to find our identity, and we want to understand our value in the world and have the world understand our value, and I think those are universal challenges at that age, and so it really wasn't that difficult to write the female perspective in that sense.
Yeah, I like the fact that when you switched from a male to a female, it opened up the voice for you.
Yeah, it really did.
It really did.
But it's also book to book because I'm in my second book right now that I'm working on, and it's an alternating point of view between a boy and a girl, and I've found that the boy's voice has been more natural for me in book 2. So it's not necessarily always going to be true that that's easier, but with this book, it definitely was.
You talked about writing to teens. Did you always want to write to teens? Was that something you just felt a natural affinity towards?
Well, I definitely feel a more natural affinity towards writing for teens, but it wasn't necessarily something I set out to do. I think we talk a lot about not writing to the market, writing our own story and something that we feel is important. And so for me, I just started writing, and this is what came out. I couldn't be happier to be part of the young adult landscape right now. There's some of the most brave writing that's happening, I think, is happening in young adult literature, and I'm so excited to be part of it. But it wasn't a conscious decision where I sat down and said, I'm going to write a young adult novel.
And tell me how the whole process of writing happened for you. You said you started to write some other books that weren't this book.
Right.
Did you always want to write?
So I've been writing for a while, but in terms of like thinking about it as a serious career, it really didn't happen until much, much later. I lived in Nashville for 12 years, and I was a freelance musician. I had a home studio and was working on a lot of indie films and commercials and just whatever paid. And then my wife and I found out we were going to be having a child, and it wasn't really part of our plan. And she had this terrific job that she loved, and it was much more steady than freelance work. And so within an hour, it was decided that I was going to be done with my music, and I would be staying home and taking care of a baby. And so I had been writing before that, but never very seriously. But you can't really record music with an infant in the room.
Right.
And so I pretty much at that point switched gears and focused on this book that I'd had an idea for, but I'd been too afraid to start writing. So in that sense, I feel like I was very much terrified into writing Mosquitoland.
The idea that you were terrified to write it, you know,
Yeah.
and you had this idea. What was it that pushed you over? Was it the fact that your life had changed and that you were home and that you weren't going to be recording music? What
Right.
was it that pushed you past that point of creative breakthrough?
Right. I feel like sometimes it takes a great fear to confront a great fear. I've thought that a lot, and I think that's very true of this book. I was just so scared of being a father and scared of saying goodbye to the only career that I ever thought I would have. And certainly at the time, the only career I ever thought I would want. And so it came out of this place of being, I think, backed into a corner and feeling like this was my only way out, I think. There was definitely a lot of, at the time, self-pity and some self-loathing. I mean, I felt like I had said goodbye to my job and I was watching a baby and now I'm going to write that novel. I just felt like such a stereotype. But then I discovered how much I loved the process, which wasn't something that I had expected. And now looking back on it, I love this far more than I ever did with the music. So,
as a debut writer, there's such a difference in the process of writing a book as there is now. There's going to be expectations and whatever.
Right.
People will be wondering what your second one is, and I'm
Right.
sure you've got your publisher asking you, like, when's it going to be done?
Right.
With this one, though, is you're sitting in that room with your baby sleeping in the other
Right.
room and you're trying to figure it out, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get to the other side.
Right.
Where did you find that sort of motivation and that sort of, were you feeling it when you were writing it? Did you say, I think I got it here?
I think there'd be like one out of every 10 days where I was like, I could do this. I could really do this. And then the other 9 days, my wife would come home from work and I would just be like, what am I doing? This is just, yeah, I think that's true of all writers, though. We all, for the most part, hate what we write. And you just keep at it until you don't hate it anymore.
Right.
And then, of course, you end up hating it again because you've seen it so many times. But my wife was a huge support. I never would have finished the book had she not said, yes, you have to do this. And so I very much attribute its completion to her.
Excellent. Let's go back to Mim for a sec.
Okay.
She tackles, there's a number of other subjects you tackle in here. Mental illness is one.
Right.
She decides to go off her medication while she's on
Right.
her cross-country journey. Did you know a lot about that? Did you have to research that? And what are your thoughts about that with the audience you're writing towards?
Sure. First of all, I don't condone that behavior at all. And I think that's really important to say. I mean, medication is so important to so many people. It wasn't part of the original storyline, and when I realized that it was becoming part of her character, I did reach out to a few people, professionals, to have them ask some questions. I mean, you can only get so much. I did a lot of research online, but that'll only get you so far. So, so I spoke with a clinical psychologist and a licensed clinical social worker just to discuss sort of her doing this thing, and it actually did change. You mentioned that she comes off them, but she actually does wean herself. I wanted to make sure that she didn't just ditch them. I tried to walk that line of character authenticity and author responsibility, and in that sense, I feel like I did what I could, and I hope that it was enough.
Well, she's one of the most memorable characters you're going to find this year. There's such excitement for the book. You have to feel such a sense of relief, but
Sure.
accomplishment too for that faith that you put in yourself early on,
Right,
now paying
right.
off. There's a lot of excitement for the book.
Right. Thank
and
you.
I offer you all the congratulations in
Thank
the
you
world.
so much. I just feel so grateful to the YA community. Everybody's been so kind, and it's just been a real pleasure, the whole process.
That's great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank
really
you so
nice
much.
to meet
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you.